Hi again. Welcome to the Week 8 wrap up of college football in the American Athletic Conference. We'll review all 7 games in the conference this week and assess my overall predictions at this point in the season, reaching all the way back to the summer. The United States Military Academy just continues to roll along, now 7-0 on the season, with a 45-28 victory over East Carolina. Bryson Daly led the way with 147 passing yards and 1 touchdown, and he was also Army's leading rusher with 171 yards on 31 carries, scoring 5 rushing touchdowns. East Carolina's Caton Hauser threw 3 second-half touchdowns and finished with 282 yards passing in a losing effort. Back in the summer, I picked ECU to win this game, and that was obviously wrong. But in my defense, of the 7 games that ECU has played this year, this is the first game of theirs I've incorrectly called. On the other hand, I've missed 3 games now for Army. ECU now stands at 3-4, whereas I had them at 4-3. Army, now at 7-0, is miles above the 4-3 record I had them projected at. ECU next takes on Temple, and I'm calling for a Pirate victory. Army is on a bye next week before taking on the Air Force Academy. Navy stayed undefeated, now at 6-0, and now bowl eligible with a 51-17 beatdown of Charlotte. Cornerback Deshaun Peel became the first Navy player to return 2 interceptions for touchdowns in a game, and Blake Horvath threw 3 scoring passes to lead the midshipmen. Charlotte is now 3-4, and I predicted every one of their games correctly so far. For Navy, I've only predicted one of their games incorrectly. That was the game against the Air Force Academy. Charlotte next travels to Memphis, where they will lose yet again. Meanwhile, Navy will travel to New York City to take on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, where they will finally suffer their first defeat of the year. In San Antonio, Owen McCown threw for 340 yards and 2 touchdowns, and UTSA scored 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to pull away from Florida Atlantic by a score of 38-24. The FAU Owls, now at 2-5, are exactly where I predicted they would be, and I have not missed a game prediction for them all season long. The Roadrunners now sit at 3-4, whereas I had them at 5-2 and battling for the conference title and a spot amid college football's top 25. So far, not so good. Florida Atlantic is on a bye next week before taking on South Florida. UTSA will next travel to Tulsa, where I think they will pick up a critical road win. South Florida battled back from a 9-7 halftime deficit and outscored UAB 28-16 in the second half to pick up a big 35-25 victory at home. The Bulls, now at 3-4, are 1 game below the 4-3 record I had them projected at. They're on a bye this week, as is UAB, whose record now stands at 1-6, whereas I had them at 2-5. The only game of theirs I've incorrectly called is when I said they would upset Army, which obviously did not happen. In Philadelphia, Evan Simon passed for 297 yards and a touchdown, and Therese Worthy added Temple's first rushing touchdown of the season by a running back, and the Owls beat Tulsa 20-10 for their second victory of the season. Tulsa is now 2-5, and I've accurately predicted each of their games this year. They next take on UTSA, which will be another loss for the Golden Hurricane. Temple, also at 2-5, will next take on East Carolina, where I say the Owls will take another loss. So far this season, I've only been incorrect on one of Temple's games in terms of wins and losses. Mekhi Hughes ran for 140 yards and a touchdown, and Tulane forced 4 turnovers as the Green Wave downriced 24-10, remaining undefeated in AAC play. Tulane is now 5-2, 3-0 in the conference, which is 1 game better than the 4-3 mark I had them at. The Louisiana game is the only one of theirs I have called incorrectly. Up next for Tulane is a trip to North Texas, where I'm calling for the Green Wave to pick up another win. Rice has had a rough season. They're now 2-5, whereas I said they would be 3-4. Rice next takes on UConn, and I think they'll pick up a win in this one. Memphis won in a wild shootout over North Texas by a score of 52-44. Mario Anderson Jr. ran for 183 yards and scored 4 touchdowns in the victory, which raises the Tigers' record to 6-1, making them now the third bowl-eligible team in the conference after Army and Navy. In this game, there were 6 touchdowns on the game's first 7 possessions and then 6 touchdowns in the second half alone. North Texas finished with 653 yards of offense, while Memphis had 526. Chad Morris threw for 445 yards and 3 touchdowns and ran for 71 yards and a touchdown, all in a losing effort for the Mean Green, who now fall to 5-2. I've only missed one of North Texas's one-loss predictions this year, and I had them at 4-3 at this point of the season. Next week, they take on Tulane, another game that I think North Texas will come up just short before going into their second bye week. On the other hand, Memphis, now at 6-1, is one game ahead of the 5-2 mark I had predicted. The only game of theirs I called incorrectly was the one against Florida State. Next week, Memphis will take on Charlotte, and I predict another win for the Tigers. In the 7 games this past week, my record was 6-1, losing only the game between Army and East Carolina. This raises my overall season total to 61-12. There are 4 conference battles coming up in week 9, along with 2 non-conference matchups. Let's see how the teams do. Make sure to leave me your comments and check back in again to see how your team does right here in the American Athletic Conference.